This Let's Edit with Media Composer tutorial is brought to you by VideoGuys.com, the leading reseller of video editing and production equipment for more than 25 years. And by Boris Effects, a leading developer of visual effect plugins, titling, video editing, and workflow tools for broadcast, post-production, and film professionals. Hey everyone, Kevin P McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Let's Edit with Avid Media Composer tutorial. And in this lesson, I am super excited to talk about the free version of Particle Illusion from Boris Effects. This absolutely free application, a standalone application, is going to give you a primer to the integrated version inside of Continuum 2020.5, and there's so much that you can do with it and easily import that footage into Media Composer to add to any timeline that you are currently working on. Alright, so as you can see, I am on the Boris Effects website at boriseffects.com/products/particle-illusion. And if you're unfamiliar with Particle Illusion, it used to be a completely standalone application, and just recently it was integrated into Continuum for host applications like Media Composer, like Premiere, like After Effects. Now, if you owned the full version of Continuum, Particle Illusion came as a standalone application, and now Boris Effects has released it to everybody as a completely free and, as you can see, easy to use particle generator application. In this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to launch the application. I'm just going to show you a few ins and outs. We're going to create a lower third element for us to then render out, bring it into Media Composer, and use in a timeline. Now, of course, the first big question that you might have is, well, what is the difference between the free version that we're going to be able to download and the full version? Well, as you can see right here, more or less the actual application itself is the same. You get the same unlimited number of emitters, the same forces and deflectors, supports up to 8K projects, 2,500 plus presets. Really where the big difference comes in is in host application integration, and I'll call it the extra bells and whistles that come along with having an application like Continuum. For example, you get integrated Mocha tracking, you get the pixel chooser or Mocha masking, you even get the beat reactor as well as integrated particle glows. So those really are the big differences. Now in this lesson, what you're going to need to do to follow along is, I'm just going to Command or Alt and tab back into Firefox, is you can simply come to download. What you're going to do is you're going to create an account to download, and you'll download either the Mac or the PC version. And what you're also going to download is, I'm going to drop this down, is you're going to want to download the Boris Particle Illusion Particle Emitters. These are absolutely free, a separate download that's going to give you, again, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of particle emitters for you to work with. All right, so once you have it downloaded and installed, you are going to want to launch it. For me, I'm just going to navigate right down here to Particle Illusion. I'm going to click on it, and in a couple seconds, it will be loaded, ready for me to work with. Now, by default, you can see there are no emitters added to my canvas. But what we can do over here is we can either search for an emitter to work with. So, for example, if I wanted to find an emitter that's going to give me fire, I can simply type it in. You'll see a whole bunch of different fire tagged emitters here. And if I wanted to preview any one of these, all I need to do is to select the one that I want to preview, and you'll notice immediately up here in the upper left-hand corner, I have a preview window that will show me exactly what this particle generator looks like. Now you'll notice in certain situations, like where we see new meteor trail, it just sits there in the middle and doesn't really do anything. What you have the ability to do is to actually click and drag, and this window is completely interactive. All right? This also gives you an idea of what would happen if you were to actually animate this particle across the screen. Okay? Now, I should talk about how to set up your canvas before we get too far into working with things. Now, there's a couple ways that we can do this. For me, I'm normally always creating the same type of canvas size. So what I like to do is I like to come into my preferences, and in the preferences you'll see you can set the default stage size for new projects. You'll see I have it set as 1920 by 1080, 23976, pixel aspect of 1, and a duration of 300. Obviously, you can get in, customize this however you would like for the type of project that you are working on. Couple other things that I do want to point out is that you can have the click in stage to add emitter, which I'll show you in just a second. It's always a good idea to show the stage tooltips as well as to use high quality playback. One thing you're going to notice is that when I'm playing back these particles, even with motion blur turned on, the quality and the preview time is super fast. All right. What I'm going to do is just cancel out of this because I'm not making any changes. If I did want to make an adjustment to this, like for example, to reset the stage, you can reset the stage pan right here under stage and even turn motion blur on here or by using the keyboard shortcut of Command or Control and B. Now, what's also important to keep in mind is that you also have these controls right here across the top of the timeline as well, whether you're dealing with things like deflectors or forces or even motion blur. They can be turned on with the click of a button. All right, now let me show you what I mean by when I click on the stage, the particle is added. So for example, I'm sitting at the start of my timeline. If I was to click right here, what's going to happen is that a particle is going to be added. Let's make sure I have it selected. Let's click. There it is right there. All right. Now this is not the particle I'm going to use, but I just wanted to show you how this works. And what's important to keep in mind is that if I was to choose a different one, let's choose boom. And I'm just going to jump down to about here. All right. And with boom, if I add boom here, you're going to notice that it's actually going to start at frame 86. It doesn't start right back at the beginning. It's going to add it by default where I happen to be right here. And you'll see there it is right there. Okay. Now, one thing you're going to notice about these particles is some of them are quite intricate and ultra realistic looking. Like the fire itself is realistic, but take a look at these smoke particles. Like they're super realistic looking, which is very cool. What's also important to keep in mind is that by default, you'll see the background is black. That is actually transparent. So I can navigate right up here and say composite over checkerboard, and you'll see there's what the transparency looks like with the particles sitting over top of it. Now, what's important to keep in mind is you'll notice that two of the options are grayed out, composite over source frame and composite over source video. These would be available to you if you are working with the integrated particle illusion of Continuum. Okay, so keep that in mind. We'll keep compositing over black, and what I'm going to do is just delete a couple of these here. There we go. Let's get ourselves right back to the beginning, and let's use our lower third example that I wanted to show you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here, and the particle that I want to look for is called blue dots. And it, surprisingly enough, looks exactly like blue dots. I think it's a very cool look. And what I'm going to do with the blue dots is I'm going to click somewhere down around here in the lower left-hand corner. Now, this is actually very cool for me to show this to you because a lot of people think that the canvas is everything that they can see in here. All right? But what we're actually dealing with the canvas is only what's inside this gray box here. So if I come down here and I click right there, you'll notice that we don't see anything right off the bat because it takes a little while for the particles to be, if you want to call them birthed, in quotes, it takes a little while for them to actually start to establish themselves like such. And you'll notice that they're cut off at the edge of the stage here because this is representing my 1920 by 1080 frame size. Now for us, for the purposes of what we're doing, the clip that we're going to be putting this over top of looks a little bit like this. Now I gotta be honest with you, I found it crazy the fact that the bridge was moving so much in this shot in a time lapse. Now this footage that I'm using in this tutorial does come to us courtesy of ArtGrid, so I want to give a big thanks to them. You can check out all of the clips like the ones we're using in this tutorial plus thousands and thousands more at artgrid.io. All right, let's jump back into Particle Illusion, and I know that the lower third that I'm going to create, I probably want it to come over to about here. Now, you'll notice that it's a very dynamic tool, Particle Illusion, to work with. A lot of it is just grabbing, dragging borders where you want them to be, adjusting sizes and things like that. Now, to be honest, this really isn't what I'm looking for. I need to get in and make some adjustments to this because I want these circles to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more dense. So here's where we can get in and start making adjustments. Now, to be honest, blue really isn't the color that I'm going for because if you take a look again at this image, it's a very orangey, very yellowy color scheme that we have going on sort of down towards the bottom of the screen. So we're going to go with that color scheme for our blue dots. So I'm going to drop down properties, and we're going to change the tint color from blue over here to orange. And I'm going to say OK. Now, one thing that I want to point out is I'm going to jump back over here to composite over checkerboard. You'll notice that it's very hard to see these over top of the checkerboard background. Now, what I'm going to do before we render this out is I'm going to double up on this to make it a little bit more noticeable when we bring it into Media Composer. All right, so let's switch back to black. And let's now add some more dots. So I think we're going to adjust our number to be somewhere up around 180. Now you'll notice these dots are fairly big, so I'm also going to adjust their size down to somewhere around 85, I think. I think that's looking actually not too bad right there. Now you'll see I'll just hit play here. It's pretty much playing back in real time. And these stretch out almost halfway across the screen, which I think is good. If I wanted to just make things a little bit more dense, we could put this up around 200. I think that's actually too much. But one thing I like to do is these are sort of floating around like an amoeba, which I'm not really big on. What I love is I love the realistic feeling when you can add parameters like weight or even gravity to things. So if I want to get in and adjust the weight of these particles, I'm just going to give them a weight of 200. You'll notice that as soon as I do that, they drop slightly. And now you'll notice what happens is as they're born, they actually appear and then start to drop, which I really like. Now, one thing I need to take into consideration is the fact that the edge of the frame is here. So that means that safe title and safe picture are going to be here. So let's just make sure that we adjust this just enough so that it's going to fit exactly where we need it to fit. Kind of like that. Perfect. Okay. I'm pretty happy with the way that this looks now. So what I now need to do is I need to take this, I need to render it out as a usable format for me to work with inside of Media Composer and then get it in to work with. So the first thing I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to duplicate this layer. And to show you why I'm doing this, I'm just going to switch back to checkerboard. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind is that at any point, if I think, wow, this particle is fantastic, I think I want to use it for something else, you can always click on the drop-down menu and save this to the emitter library. Okay? What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to double this up. So I'm going to duplicate the emitter like such. Now you'll notice that the dots now become a lot easier to see. What I'm also going to do here is I'm going to save this project out. And I'm going to call it the Manhattan Bridge lower third. I'm going to say save. I'd actually already saved this out before, so I'm just going to replace the one that I currently have there, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. So let's get in and let's export this. I'm going to navigate up to render, and I'm going to bring up the Boris Effects render and export settings screen. Now I'm going to call this Manhattan Bridge lower third, which I'm totally fine with. Now, because we are working in Media Composer, we're going to want to export this as a ProRes encoded file, not an H.264 file. And because we want it to have the alpha channel, we're going to render it out as ProRes 4444. All right, right here. Now, to be honest, I can leave everything else on its preset. The only thing you're going to want to make sure you double check is right here, RGB plus pre-multiplied alpha. If you're not familiar with Media Composer in the last few updates, we actually have the ability to work with pre-multiplied alphas, so it's actually a very good feature to have. Now, I'm going to force motion blur on because I always love the look of motion blur, and I'm basically just going to say go. Now, you'll see that this is actually going to render out pretty darn quick. I haven't sped anything up here. Nice. All right. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to close the renderer, and I'm just going to hide Particle Illusion. Now, before I jump into Media Composer, if you take a look on my desktop, right here I have my lower third element, and you'll notice that we have all this black around the edges. Don't worry, with pre-multiplied alphas, we'll get rid of all that so that our circles will look exactly the way they did inside of Particle Illusion. All right, so let's Command or Alt and tab into Avid Media Composer. And once here, you'll see I have my shot ready to go, and I also have a super ready to go. There we go. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click, I'm going to come to Input, and I'm going to come to the source browser. Now, one thing I do want to mention, we are working with the most current version of Media Composer as of this recording, 2020.5. I'm going to head to the desktop, and what I have done intentionally is I've set this up to come in the default Media Composer fashion. Now, what I mean by that is I'm going to come to the Manhattan Bridge lower third, and I'm going to say link. And you'll notice that the file came in with no alpha channel, which doesn't really help me. Now, there's a reason why it does this. And a lot of people think that it's a problem with particle illusion and it's not rendering the alpha out correctly, but it actually is. And it's not that it's a problem, it's just that it's a, I don't know if a feature is the right way to put it, but if I hit Command Shift and the equal sign, Control Shift and equal for all my Windows friends, and I navigate down to the link setting, if you come over to your link options, you'll notice that one of the options right here is the alpha channel. And what do you want the alpha channel to do when it is brought in? And I want it to invert white equals opaque. I always get these two confused, but I'm pretty sure it's white equals opaque. I'm going to say OK. What we're going to do is just close our settings. I'm going to delete the clip, even though I'm just deleting the linked media. And I'm going to bring it back in again. And once I bring it back in, because Media Composer is looking at that link setting, you'll now see that this element has come in as a keyable element. Very nice. All right, so let's add 2 new tracks of video. 1, 2, Command or Control and Y. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this element and I'm going to drop it down on video track number 2. Now you'll see it there. Now the only problem is, and I'm going to switch over to the single view, is that it's not exactly being pre-multiplied like it should be. And the reason it's not being pre-multiplied as it should be is that I haven't told Media Composer that the foreground is pre-multiplied like that. That's looking much better than it did before. So now what I can do is have the element come in like that. I can now, let's just switch back to my single or my dual display mode. We can take our element here and I'm just going to drop it in on video track number 3. There we go. And I'm going to hit F12. We'll just add in, we'll say this will come in 24 frames and fade out 0 frames. There we go. And now what happens is that our lower third establishes itself, and then our super comes in to create a very stylish looking lower third element. Now, let's take this concept one step further. Let's say hypothetically, you haven't taken the plunge yet and updated to Continuum that has the integrated particle illusion. But what you'd like to do is you still have Continuum and you'd like to work with this lower third element, maybe add a glow to it. Well, what you always have the ability to do is I'm going to come into Command and 8, Control and 8 for all my Windows friends out there, and I'm just going to type in Film Glow. And I'm looking for the Fast Film Glow BCC style element or effect. I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it and drop it down onto our shot. I'm going to step into effects mode, Shift and Y on the keyboard. I'm going to come to my title matte section. We're going to apply this to the title matte and I'm going to invert it. And what I'm now going to do is just adjust the intensity of the glow. Give it a bit more radius here, but it's more so the threshold that I want to adjust. There we go. And what we've now just done is taken that element and given it just a new level of awesomeness here by adding that fast film glow. And you'll see when it fades in, we really have all those glowing particles. And let's just call up our channel that has our lower third on it. We'll go back to our single display here. And there we go. Looking very cool. And a very simple lower third, but a very creative and powerful looking lower third for you to quickly create and work with. Now, you'll remember I saved that project out, and I did that for a reason. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to remove the lower third element altogether. And what I'm going to do is press Command or Control and 8. And I'm just going to come back here. I'm going to type in Particle Illusion. And I'm going to take the Particle Illusion effect, and I'm going to take it and drag it and drop it down onto this empty layer. What I'm now going to do is hit Shift and Y to step into effects mode, and we're going to launch Particle Illusion. With Particle Illusion launched from the integrated Particle Illusion inside of Continuum, what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate up to File, and I'm going to say Open Project. You know where I'm going with this. We're not going to save anything. I'm going to go back to the desktop and open our Manhattan Bridge lower third, and I'm going to say Open, and guess what we now have? We now have our dots happening like such. And I can even now jump in and say, show it to me over the source video, so I can now see exactly what this is going to look like in the final project. All right, now since I showed you how we could take that Particle Illusion standalone element, bring it in, and apply a glow effect to it, I thought before I wrap things up, I'd just quickly show you how I can do that in effect in the integrated Particle Illusion. All I'm going to do, simply navigate down to Apply. Once we've gotten out of particle illusion, I'm going to navigate over here to where it says glow on. Now you'll notice that something slightly unexpected happens, which is once I apply the glow, it's actually being applied to everything. Basically the particles, the background or foreground or whatever you want to refer to it as. Basically the glow is everywhere. And this is not what we want. We only want the glow applied to the particles themselves. Well, if I navigate up here to the composite dropdown, you'll see the composite style is set to direct or classic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch that from basically being one composite to have it composite the alpha and apply modes if I wanted to use them. For me, the only thing I really care about is that alpha. What I'm going to do as soon as I select that is you'll now see that if I come down to the glow parameter, I'm now only impacting the particles, so we can get in and fine-tune this glow exactly the way that we want in effect. Now, one last thing that I'm also going to throw your way, and this is a parameter you're going to find inside the standalone version and the integrated version, and that's this parameter right here. I'm going to drop down particle properties, and it's called frames to preload. Now, with the animations that we have happening here, if I come back to the beginning, you'll notice that the animation establishes itself. The particles are basically being born over time. But maybe I actually want the effect to already be there, or the particles to already be on the screen when I've started. Now again, standalone, integrated, whether you're actually in the effect or not, this parameter works exactly the same. Since I'm working in a 2398 frame per second timeline, I'm just going to use about 2 seconds as our example. So if I come down to about the 2-second mark here, you'll see this is where my particles are at this point of the animation. However, if I wanted that to be the very first frame of this animation, so basically the particles have already established themselves, what I'm going to do either inside the effect itself or in the effect editor, I'm simply going to turn the frames to preload to be 48. Now you'll see I already have the particles on screen set to go, so you can see you can really tailor this effect however you want. All right, the last thing that I want you to keep in mind with that project that I saved out of Particle Illusion, I can take that project and I can send it to any editor that has the integrated Particle Illusion effect inside a Media Composer, so I could conceivably be the lower third creation guy using the free version of Particle Illusion at my house. Once I'm done, no rendering required. I just take those little projects and let's hide out a Media Composer right to the desktop. Let's take a look at this file. I'm just going to say get info, and instead of megabytes, we're talking about 45 kilobytes for that lower third. Take it, drop 100 of them into an email, send them off to whoever the editor is that's working with the integrated Particle Illusion, and you can then be the one-stop shop for creating all the lower thirds you need, or particle elements for any project the editor's working on with the free version of Particle Illusion. Now, as we wrap things up, don't forget, this version of Particle Illusion, the standalone version, is absolutely free. But if you want to take advantage of some of the fantastic integrated features, don't forget, you can get it as part of Continuum 2020.5. And as always, I want to remind you to check out our sponsors, Video Guys, for all of your Avid software and hardware, as well as thousands of other products that you can check out over at videoguys.com. And I also want to give a big shout out to the team at Boris Effects, makers of Continuum, Sapphire, and Mocha. And don't forget to use that coupon code of MC101 to get 10% off your next Continuum purchase. If you like this tutorial, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And don't forget, if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, don't hesitate to send them to me at kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.